Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profitable Christian Business Podcast. I am your host, Doug Greathouse, and today I am overjoyed to have my guest, Jon Sheldon, with me. Jon is a leadership, growth, and performance coach whose experience spans Marine infantry leadership during the Iraq War, the finance industry, Fortune 500 sales leadership, and coaching high performers. Today, we're connecting lessons from high-stakes leadership with practical business execution, sustainable growth, and Christian purpose. Welcome to the Profitable Christian Business Podcast, Jon.
Thanks so much, Doug. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me, man.
Man, a lot of that jumps out to me right away. And I know I sent you some prepared questions, but usually I go off road, right? When it comes to the questions. So I'm going to go off road right away.
Okay.
Hopefully not throw you for a loop. So let's talk about your combat experience a little bit. So talk about, I want to know a little bit about that and how it's prepared you for where you are now.
Yeah, I think it's done a huge job of preparing me for where I'm at now. It taught me what real pressure is, what sacrifice is. I don't think I really knew what love was before I was in combat. I think all that has helped me as not only as a business owner, a coach, but also just as a man, of understanding the cost of life, how fragile it is, how closeness really can become your greatest strength, and how doing it on your own and being more of a part of a team has really shaped my life. I don't think I really realized any of that before I truly got into combat. I probably learned some of it along my path to combat, like when I got in the Marine Corps in general, but I probably learned most of those lessons in a deep, deep manner when I was overseas. Our first deployment was in 2006. Pretty gnarly time in the Iraq War. We were in place, for any listener that knows something, we were in the Haditha Triad, it was called. And why I bring that up is, we weren't able to really shower or talk. We weren't allowed to talk to our families for the first 60 days. It was complete operational, silence, for a bunch of reasons. But I think that whole shock to the system really taught you how to rely on other people, and also how to handle just immense amounts of stress when you're 19 years old.
Wow. So one thing that really struck me that you said, and you said it early on, is you didn't know what love was. I want to dive a little bit deeper there. Like, how did you discover what love really was in combat, right? In that really stood out to me. Like, that's the first time I heard someone say that.
Yeah, it's probably because most guys don't like to talk about it. But it's the truth. I've struggled to find. I'm happily married. My wife is the most important person to me. But my Marines and my friends in combat specifically, we loved each other unequivocally. I think it's interesting. Like, you watch guys literally argue, get in literal fistfights, and then run into a building after each other. That's love, man. That's something bigger that it's really hard to teach, and it's really beautiful to experience. And I know these are big words from, these are really soft words from a Marine, but it's the truth. And I think especially any vet out there listening to this that's been to combat knows exactly what I'm talking about. There is a different bond. That's what we call it. We call it a bond because that's more manly. It's love. I love my friends, and I still do.
I wish I had the exact scripture reference, but no greater love has a man than to lay down his life for his brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is, right?
That's what it is, man. Yeah. It actually just giving me kind of chills even thinking about it. Of just, no, seriously, of how much you truly care for the guy next to you. And you might not even like him. I think that's funny too. Like, all the movies, everyone's like friends and stuff. Nah, man, no. But I would do anything for those guys. Anything.
Let me ask you something. How many goals have you set that just slowly faded out? It's not because you lack motivation. It's not because you're lazy. It's because you don't have a system for execution. That's exactly why we built the Goal Getting app, the execution system for Christian ops who are done drifting. Inside the app, you don't juggle 10 goals. You lock in one clear 90-day focus. Then we help you break it into weekly needle-moving actions, stay consistent with daily execution, and actually follow through, even when life gets busy. This isn't about doing more. It's about finally finishing what you start. Clarity, execution, momentum. If you're ready to stop drifting and actually move forward, go to goalgetting.app/reset and lock in your next 90 days today. Now let's kind of transition this a little bit. How that plays into your role now, like this amount of, and I'm really going off road here because I didn't plan on going in this direction, but how much that care and that commitment, I think there's that commitment word, like you commit to your spouse too, but I feel like in that essence, you're committed to your brothers, right? In arms. So how does that carry over into the way that you work with clients now?
That's a really great question.
Or just in business in general.
Yeah, no, I think with clients, it's perfect. I think it's not the same level. But with the type of business that I run, I can be very selective with who I pick to be on quote unquote this team, right? Or who I pick to be a client. I'm not like weird about it, but there's definitely some things that disqualify you from even potentially being a client. And when a client's under my care, they're under my care. And I tell that to them all the time. Like, I've got rules and, there's good business practices, but at the end of the day, my goal is to care for them and to get them to that next level of performance or growth or overcome that next obstacle. And I think that level of being prepared to do what it takes for another person is how that impacts my coaching business specifically. I care deeply about my clients, like very, very deeply about my clients and their successes.
You want them to win, right?
I want them to win. I want, and not really, and that's part of leadership, right? Is you have to want people to win more than you want to win. And that's why I found myself in this career, because I didn't really know that there was a career path that could be lucrative to do that, realistically, call it what it is. And that is my sole, I wouldn't say sole purpose, but that's a big purpose of my business, right? I want my clients to win all the time. I want them to win over myself all the time. Absolutely.
That is awesome. Now, I think we need to back up the truck just a little bit because we haven't really got into what you do. So let's talk about the type of services you provide and what winning for your clients would look like.
Yeah. So, I've got some clients. Yeah. So I'm a growth, leadership, and what I call small unit teams coach, meaning that I like and I specialize in working with owners, operators, people in sales, growing teams, working on their leadership, and still doing the work. I think that's where that small unit comes in, right? I think of when I take it back to the Marine Corps, I'm thinking about, sergeant and below, and again, there's probably some guys out there that are like, oh, we're doing the work too. Yeah, I get it. Well, I'm talking about small unit leadership, guys that are actively owner operators, women that are owner operators of their business and growing a team, scaling, working on their leadership, working on their presence with their family, balance, counterbalance is probably even a better word for that. And every client comes in with a little bit different. I primarily, again, work with business owners, and they're scaling, and generally that means teaming on growing teams and growing leadership. But I'll tell you right now, one of the disqualifiers to be a client of mine, like I kind of briefed earlier, is if you come in and say, like, I am hiring you because I want to earn 30% more, grow my business 30% more. I have no control over that. Does that happen a lot? Yeah, it does actually, and more. But it's because you work on the other stuff that is the lead indicator to those things. So, I've got sales directors and business owners right now that have hired me that are a little bit older in their careers, and they're looking for purpose. They've achieved everything they wanted to, and now it's like, what's next? And they hire me to work through what purpose looks like and what does that mean for them and their family. I have people that have hired me that are burnt out business owners that simply want more time with their families, and structuring it that way. When you've built a business for the last 25 years where that has always been a priority in your mind, right now let's take action on it, I've got leaders and teams that are hiring their first employee, scaling the organization, and everything in between. But primarily, I work with high-level sales individuals and business owners.
So two things that I want to bring up, and I've brought this up before on other podcasts with different guests, but I always appreciate the perspective. You mentioned balance, right? You could get 4 different entrepreneurs and all have a different take on balance, right? That some believe it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as balance.
Yep.
And some believe that it's a must have. So what do you stand? Kind of what are your insights around balance?
Yeah. So I think I'm in the kind of the middle camp, actually. I don't think that balance is necessarily real in the way that generally people think about it. Now, again, sounds like those individuals that are saying balance is a must are thinking about it probably the way that I am. That's why I threw out that term, Doug, counterbalance. For anybody listening, when you think about balance, I really encourage you to think about counterbalance instead. Meaning, when you think of that famous picture of that tightroper in New York City, it's an old black and white picture. Everybody's seen it. You've got it in the back of your mind. He's out there on a tightrope. And is he out there alone, or does he have any equipment? He's got one piece of equipment. And what is that? It is a 25-foot pole that is a counterbalance, and he's moving it barely, moving it inches, right? That is what balance looks like in life. It's never 50-50. And that's what people always assumed, like, well, I need this ideal level of balance in my life. You're never going to have that. You're never going to have that. At every point in time in your life, you're going to need something is going to be a little bit more towards this, a little bit more towards that. And that understanding that piece of it and owning that piece of it is actually where balance comes from. That's where that feeling comes from, of just knowing that you've set the expectation of what this is going to require. And you know what? When you're starting a business, unfortunately, it's probably going to mean you're going to have to work a lot, and you might not have exactly the balance you're looking for. But as long as everybody's on the same page with that, that's when it starts to become actual balance.
I think what's important there, and I want to kind of parlay that into another segment of life. But first, I want to talk about this. Is I think being where your feet are, right? You may be out of balance, right? But sometimes, like as entrepreneurs, we'll be working lots and lots of hours, right? But then when we shut down, we really need to shut down, right? For that 20, maybe it's 80-20, but for that 20%, we really need to be present in that other situation. And I think that's what most people miss is like they still are not present, right?
Yes, that's a great way to put it, Doug. It's like they're still at work, sitting on the couch or having dinner with their children. Yeah.
Which brings me to we're taking this into a business context, but it also works in other relationships like marriage, right? Sometimes it's the idea, everybody's perfect ideal is it's 50-50, right? But it's not always, right?
No.
Sometimes someone needs more support. One spouse needs more support than the other, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my wife and I went through that. She went back to grad school 3-4 years ago at this point in time, and because of that, there was a lot of sacrifices that she had to make on nights and weekends with studying and working, originally full time and then dropped down to part time. And for me, there was a lot of other things that I had to do around the house to support her and work longer hours to make sure that she was able to fully focus on her studies to accomplish her goals. And again, when it comes down to that agreement and that expectation and those conversations that you have to have of, hey, what are we both on the same page with this? Like that, what it's going to require for us to do this. And when I started Bellawood, she's done the same. She's asked the same questions. We set good boundaries of when I'm going to be home, when are the late nights that I am going to be working and need to be working, and finding that healthy boundary. But man, like any kind of relationship, and man, I've definitely not knocked it out of the park. Like none of us have basically.
Nope.
But man, I've learned a lot. and I've been humbled, especially in the communication department, of how absolutely critical that is.
Yeah. I run a Bible study every Friday, and the men and I discuss balance sometimes a lot, and we also discuss not having arrived. Right, you never arrive spiritually. You could be the pastor, and you're still never arrived spiritually.
Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way about marriage. You could be married for 40 years, but still not have gotten it perfect. Right,
Yeah.
because it's a journey. Right. So,
Yeah, it is the journey.
but you got, and it just goes, let's go. I think that's a good segue into my next piggybacking question off of what you said, and that's around purpose, right?
Mm.
Um, do you help do most of your clients come with purpose intact, or is that something you help them with? And if not, can you kind of unpack that, how you help them around purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to, actually. So yes and no. Most of my clients come to me with a business purpose. Most of them know why they're doing what they're doing. And generally that has a little bit to do with their personal life, but a lot of it to do with, again, most of the people that hire me are business owners. They have that idea of what their purpose is, but it's almost always the first exercise that I do with a client. I call it building your your personal performance blueprint. And purpose is the first step. And so I take them through that exercise, and it takes a while to get through the four aspects of that. And so purpose is one, vision's the next, ecosystem, and then what are your motivators? But that purpose one always takes the longest. So if the whole thing takes about 3 hours, which it does, I'd be lying, actually. I've never gotten it to 3 hours. It's always almost more like 3.5 to 4. But I try to make it 3 hours. And that seems like a lot, but it's the time, right? It's forcing a client to take the time to say, hey, look, you can't talk about, in the purpose section specifically, you cannot talk about your career once. Define purpose without ever mentioning what you do for a living. Cool. Now, when we get further along in the exercise, let's challenge that. One of my favorite questions to ask is, we go through a series of questions. What would you want people to say at your eulogy? Like, about how you lived and led? Talked about when you felt the most purposeful. Like, what does that even mean? Again, purpose, you can't use it in the definition. And then as we scroll down, we ask one of the final questions is, now kind of prove it. Here, write your one unapologetic purpose statement. Boil it down. If you woke up at 3 a.m., and this is one of my favorite questions, if you woke up at 3 a.m. and somebody asked you, what's your purpose? What would you answer? What would you say? When you're tired, what would you answer? And then the next question is, prove it 3 times to me. Show me 3 times where that purpose was called into question and you overrid it. And you said, no, this is my purpose. This is calling this into question. I'm going to hold on to my path and show the world and show myself that this is what I truly live for. This is my whys. Simon Sinek wrote a great book, Start With Why. Show me, prove it. And and what I find in that exercise is nobody's ever asked them that. Everyone takes a surface level purpose, like, awesome, great. But if you're working with me, you've got to prove it. Tell me how you've done that. Show me how that is your purpose, not what you've said, not lip service. So after the Marines, I was in financial planning for a long time. That's where both I ran teams in finance and then became a director of sales. And one of the things that I was always told in that career path, and it's true for some, is that it's the best career path in the world. You get to help people with some of the most important decisions that they'll ever make. You'll make a lot of money doing it, and you'll have a lucrative schedule because you're basically running your own business. You'll be able to go to all your kids' games, and you're going to go to recitals. You're never going to miss vacation. You're never going to do any of that stuff. And then I started looking at people that were 25 years in the business, and I said, when are you doing any of that outside of the first 2? Outside of helping people make some really important decisions with their lives, an incredibly important job, and making a lot of money doing that. Show me when you've canceled a client meeting because of a thing, not the other way around. And how many times? That's prove it. That hurts people a lot of times. At least it hurts their ego. But it's an important question.
That is amazing. And I think you're doing such a great job of setting me up to ask you the next question. So, authenticity, right? I think that has a lot to do with being authentic. You talked about lip service. Like, it's one thing to put a mantra on the wall, but as an individual, and even further so as a company, do you really live that mantra? When the rubber hits the road, do you stick to it? Right? I, I think that. So I guess I'm making statements more than asking a question right now. But I guess the question I want to ask you is, how does, like, I'm sure you coach people on this. When the rubber does meet the road, how do you help them stay tied to their purpose and mission?
I call it, radical honesty, I guess. It's unapologetically challenge, that's honestly why people have to pay me up front.
Yep. Yep.
No, all joking aside, yeah, it comes down to that. Most people are never challenged, man, on what they say. Like we were just talking about that prove it statement, but it's a little bit more than that when you're talking about authenticity. It's, do your actions align? So look, companies oftentimes, and they create core values for the company, right? That's definitely part of being authentic, I would say. Hopefully, right? As long as you stick to them and they're yours, right? One of my favorite examples is Enron had integrity as a core value. That's a challenging one, right? Hey, well, I was working with a business owner. It's probably better to say a story. I was working with a business owner a few years ago, and they called me and they said, "Hey, um, we had this employee do something that was out of alignment with our core values. They've done this actually multiple times, but this is the first time we've clearly stated our core values, and they violated those. What do we do?" And I say, either you change your core values, or unfortunately that, and this is a small team that this would be losing 25% of their staff, or you stand true to your authentic core values. So it's got to pick. And that's what being authentic is, the choice. It's the choice that you make that's authenticity, right? They ended up making a great choice, and it ended up working out for the better. Absolutely. Does it always work out like that? No. Sometimes it's super, super stressful. For them, it wasn't. It was obviously the right choice as it came down to be. But I was really proud of them because that proved their authenticity. If you believe it, show it. And when and it's easy to be super authentic when everything's going right? That's the easy part. It's the hard part is when it's not. And you have to toe that line and stand true to whether it's your beliefs or whether it's your mantra or a creed or a way of life. It's, who do you show up with and how do you show up? And are you being honest with who you are? It's challenging. Authenticity is hard to keep, because it rubs people the wrong way sometimes. But you have to be, in order to be, well, man, Jordan Peterson said something really profound one time. It's, in order to be something around the, in order to be truthful, you have to be able to risk being offensive. I'm butchered his quote. It's something like that. But that's the truth. Most people cave when that happens, and then that's not authentic, right? And you don't have to be, a bad person to just stick to what you believe in, who you are.
I think two terms that could be married are authenticity and consistency. Right?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yep.
Because your authenticity shows the more consistent you are with it, right? So I think that also leads right into, so we do a fill in the blank question on every one of these episodes. So the biggest mistake high performers make when pressure starts rising is blank.
Well, my answer to that question is, the biggest mistake that they make is probably two things. But the first thing that comes to my mind is that they think that it's going to be a perfect situation, and they're trying to create that perfection. I think that's the first thing that they fail at, is that they have an idea of the perfect scenario, or I'm going to do this. You just have to accept the pressure that is here, and that all great plans don't end up working out the way that you think. It's hard to accept, but you have to accept that cost up front. And
Is
then
that
the next thing that they bail on is is probably their authenticity or their beliefs about what they should be doing as a business owner and holding true to that, taking on clients that they shouldn't, etc.
so? With the first thing that you said, does that with wanting a perfect situation? I feel like a lot of your experience with that may have came from being in the military, right? Um,
Yeah.
be, because you can't control everything, right?
No,
So you
not
just
at
have
all.
to adapt to what's being presented to you.
Yeah, and that's where the skill comes in, Doug, is how quickly can you adapt? It's not the fact that we need to change course, and this is where that word and this is where that really comes down to, is that ego, right? They stick to that ego. They've got too much ego around it, right? I've made that mistake recently, and it's actually cost me dearly. But it's like we're all humans here. Is they stick to that ego a little bit too long instead of adjusting and saying, "Oh, great, I need to adapt." And adapt is actually a keyword that I use in my coaching a lot. Of how quickly do we adapt and how quickly do we recognize that things are going wrong, and taking ego totally out of it and saying, whatever our mission is the priority. That's what we need to get done based on these guidelines. Based on these core pillars, these core guidelines. Who cares if it gets done the way that I want it, or the way that somebody on a podcast that I didn't like, that I actually don't like? I'm like, oh man, who cares about that dude? You know, but then all of a sudden they say something really, really profound. I'm like, yeah, he was right. Who cares? Get your ego out of it. And I think that's a big piece of being able to adapt quickly, is getting rid as quickly as you can of ego.
It's also really interesting to me when you mention ego. The flip side of that is when you let your ego down, especially if you're running a team, the trust that starts to swell up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Because they know that it's not all about you, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's about us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually a really good point, where you want to create more trust. Be humble.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Admit that you messed up. Man, you will gain a lot of trust from your people. I'm serious. If you just don't try and act like everything's fine.
Couldn't agree more. We So Jon, let's talk about faith a little bit and how your journey. We talked about the business journey and how internal operating systems and all that sort of stuff, but we haven't really delved into faith very well to this point. So can you talk about how your faith has been through this journey from the military through your career now, up to where you are now?
Yeah, I've had a up and down relationship with it, if I'm being super frank. And I'm Doug, you and I talked prior, when we were doing the pre-interview to this, that I'm not going to sit here on your podcast and proclaim that I am even I mean, practicing is a weird word, I guess, but this huge man of faith that goes to church every Sunday, etc. And that would be a lie. And one thing that I've always believed, truthfully, and I've stated to everybody, is I don't know the scripture, but it always stuck with me as a child, of I would rather be hot or cold, not lukewarm.
Yeah.
And I've always taken that to heart, with a lot of things that I've done in life, honestly, but especially with faith and Christianity. One of the biggest reasons, Doug, is my father and my mother are my dad's a prior minister, and my mother they're both very, very religious people. And it's one of the things that I don't think I always appreciated about them, but now find it the thing I appreciate the most about them.
Hmm.
And going back to that authenticity thing, um, like their views, hate their views, indifferent to their views, doesn't really matter to me. They have their views and they stick to them. And it's inspired me to quite frankly dive deeper into my own faith as I've gotten older and experienced more things and really looked back at life. And I can sit here and fully confident, and not in any weird way, that the combat did not help my faith.
Mm.
It just didn't. For me, I know some guys get closer, and I appreciate that about them. For me, it unfortunately did the opposite. But conversations with, great men like yourself, and great men like my father, and great women like my mother, and Something that really shook me to my core recently, Doug, now that we're talking about faith a little bit, I took my mom out to, I'm getting close to 40. I'm, you know, 8 months away from 40. And it's made me think a lot about life. And one of the things that I had thought about living a pretty eventful life up to this point is how many people that that are still alive, that at one point in time I truly did care deeply about, that I will never talk to and never see again. I'm not sure if I shared this on the pre-interview. And it's made me think about that a lot. And, even thinking about it, I know I'm not going to reach out. I know they're just not that important in my life anymore. And that's sad to say. It truthfully is, but everybody's got those people. When we look back at life, like, I'm probably just never talk to that person ever again. And they were a big, big piece of my life for a while. When we're sitting down, where my mother comes into this is we're sitting down over at Mother's Day. I took her out to lunch and I asked her the same question. She's in her mid-70s. And I asked her, do you ever think about that? We were talking about life. My mom and I have awesome, great conversations. One of the things I love about our relationship, even though I probably, like every guy, should probably spend more time with her. And she had looked at me dead in the face, and it just hit me to my core, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. And she goes, no, because I will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see them all again. And I truly believe that. And I was like, man, what a beautiful thing that would be to have such a strong belief that not only is there an afterworld, but the people that you have held closest to you for your entire lives will be there in some way, shape, and form. And that really hit me close to my heart and made me start really thinking about not only my mortality, quite frankly, and I think about my mortality every day, but really about what does confidence mean when you firmly believe that there is an almighty that is looking out for you, that loves you unconditionally. Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to really dive into that, Doug. And it's something now that I think about honestly every single day as I get more intimate with my faith and what that means to me. And it's something that I truly think of a lot of, like, man, how great could situations be if I thought that I wasn't alone, right? That someone loved me unconditionally. Again, I have an amazing relationship with my wife, but it's fascinating. And so I hope that answers your question of just like, it's a pondering, it's a realization for me of love and power.
Joy
Joy.
is what,
Great word.
like,
Great word for
there, like joy. I say to people all the time, joy is not happiness, right? Joy is something totally different. It's that confidence in knowing that, and we talked about purpose a little bit, is purpose on this world is finite, right? Your purpose is, you're gonna outlive, like, you're gonna die, and your purpose your legacy might still be here, but you're gonna die.
Yeah.
When you have eternal purpose, if what you're doing on this world is to the betterment of others, that's like an eternal purpose, right? And and joy, just what it does for me is fear takes a way back seat, right? Because I'm not afraid to die. It's kind of weird. Yeah. And anxiety, right? Because I know that I don't have to be, I have control, but I don't have to be ultimate control. I'm not like, there's someone higher that's in control of all of it, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, like, again, faith over fear, right? When I know that he has my best, even though there will be valleys, right? And that's for my growth. I know that he has my good in store, right? So
absolutely. I saw something on social media today, Doug, that actually, like, weirdly hit me too. And it was this guy just repeating this over and over, and he was actually yelling it, which was what probably got my attention. But it's you row, God steers.
mm-hmm.
And I was like, interesting, because it's not this like total, hey, I don't have to do anything, right? It's just like, oh no, he's got it. No. He's got the plan. He's got the direction, right? But you still have to row. And
Which
I
is
thought that
more of the
that
work.
was super simple, but was super, super hit me.
Yep. You have to take like, it's not this whole manifest thing. You don't manifest things. You have to put in work. You have to take action, right?
Yeah.
And there will be growth while doing that.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. That really is cool. Just go back to the authenticity again. When you're able to share things like your own faith journey and kind of where you're at and where you've been, it's really, really cool.
I appreciate it, Doug. Thanks for asking.
I also ask a secret question on every episode. So it's not a secret question. I already gave it to you. It's not a secret to you, but it's a secret to something. So what is the secret to staying calm and making great decisions when everything around you feels chaotic? You have more than enough experience around that.
I do. Yeah. Yeah. Having an operating system, an internal operating system is the answer to that question. Yeah. It's definitive. It's something I talk about again a lot. But having a systematic way to think through issues and problems, I use it myself. I've got a system that I use. I'd be more than happy to share, but it's an operating system that you use to be able to define and create action, and it's repeatable. And the important part is it has to be an operating system internally. Otherwise, you'll think too much and you'll second guess things. And the more times that you complete that operating system or that cycle, the more you'll gain confidence and the quicker you'll be able to do it. So the world starts falling apart and you say, boom, I'm good. Let's go. Right. And that is truly what a lot of Marine Corps training is about. You going back to the military for a second, you train things obnoxiously and you're so annoyed by it almost the entire time you're in. And then you learn these lessons. I'm 20 years out now. And you think through and be like, oh, yeah, because you need it to be second nature. And that's something that most people don't ever do, is they never practice these operating systems until the actual chaos starts happening and they've never tested it. It's like, what? Why aren't you doing this daily? Like, why aren't we practicing these systems that we've created that we know can get us out of these situations, that can frame our mindset, even on little situations in life, and practicing it constantly? So mine, if you mind me sharing?
Yes, please.
But yeah, mine is really simple, and it has to be simple, right? Clarity, condition, cost. Am I clear on what's going on right now? Am I in the condition to make this decision or solve this issue? Right? And am I accepted to pay the cost of what's going to eventually happen from this? That's it. Clarity, condition, cost. And the next three, when you start, is align, act, adapt. Align that first action to solving that issue. A lot of people don't do that. It's one of the things they screw up the most. Sounds stupid. It's actually an extra step I had to put in because people were messing it up so often. You have to align that first action, meaning, okay, great. You're clear on what needs to happen. You've assessed your condition. You know what you've got. You got your gear. You know you need, or if you don't, you know what you need to grab, right? Now you've accepted the cost. Awesome. What's your first action? It's this. Is it in alignment with those three things? Clarity, condition, cost. I know this is going to look confusing. It's really not. Is that first action in alignment with your clarity? Yes or no? Sometimes we'll go through this exercise and someone will say, well, I'm going to do this action. And it has nothing to do with what they just talked about. It doesn't solve the cost. It doesn't help their condition, and it's not clear. Then that can't be the action, right? Then you act, and then going back to the word that you used earlier that I use all the time, then you adapt. So clarity, condition, cost, align, act, adapt. But the first part is clarity, condition, cost.
So good. I know so you mentioned two things in there that I know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and that is clarity, number one. They get stuck because they don't have clarity, and that seems to be mission critical at the very top of what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Right? Because with clarity, without clarity, you go in the wrong direction or you don't go at all, right? And just overwhelm, right? And not having a system. I talk a lot about, not necessarily so much in the I love that you're sharing this because I don't think about the internal operating system. I think about all the systems that entrepreneurs put in place to get things done, right?
Right.
And you fail to the levels of your system, but how much more can you succeed if you have an internal operating system? It's just amazing.
Thanks.
So one of the things I know that you talk about, we're going to go back to authenticity a little bit, is what does an authentic blueprint?
Yeah, it's that I mentioned it actually earlier. It's that purpose, vision, ecosystem, and motivator. So the purpose is obviously your why, and these are the four things that, in my experience at least, and that's what I can only talk about in my experience. The high performers, the people that have it solid, that are just solid. It doesn't even need to be in business. It can just be in life. They have a great purpose. They know where they're going, or they've checked their compass. They have that vision for their life. They surround themselves with people, places, tools, right? It's one of those things that ecosystem and environment really mean a lot, is in that ecosystem nowadays, where it used to be like, who are the five people's, who you're supposed to be the average of the five people that you're around, right? And there's a good reason for that. And that's a question that I do ask, like, who are the five people closest to you? Are they building or breaking you? But then it goes far more deeper into that most people don't take the time to think of. And that is systems, tools, physical environment that you're in. COVID taught us a lot about that. You know, I'm still shocked when I meet an entrepreneur or a business owner that doesn't use any sort of CRM. That's like crazy to me. It's 2026, people. Let's figure it out. But at the same time, that's a piece of it. So it's your environment. Like, what do you surround yourself with is so important. And then that last piece is motivators. It used to be discipline, but when you get down to it, and this annoys a lot of people, like, oh, you don't need motivation. There's this big trend. You don't need motivation. You need discipline. You need this. You need habits. Yeah. Okay, great. And you're right. That's what it leads to. But motivation leads to that. And in 2026, the last study that I saw was that it used to take about 21 days to build a successful habit. Now it takes about 66. The main reason for that, technology. We're distracted easily, often. So we switch. We've got more ideas than we know what to do with. Oh, maybe this isn't working out the way that I thought to. I'll change it because I saw this on social media. Great. But at the end of the day, that means you need 66 consecutive days of motivation before you can create a habit or discipline. So motivation for me has to be the fourth. Not that I like it. I prefer discipline, truthfully. But I witnessed firsthand when I was a very highly disciplined person in the Marine Corps and then lost my way a little bit when I got out, like a lot of people do. And it's like, oh, so discipline wasn't it. How do I get back? Well, you need motivation. You need the spark. And whenever I tell people to talk about motivation, I'm talking more about the spark. What gets you to action? What's that first thing? Because discipline is the action. What gets you to action?
What role, how do you feel, I'm trying to think about the best way to ask this question, that your purpose plays into motivation? Can you be motivated without purpose?
No, I don't think so. That's why purpose is first. And that's why motivation is usually the easiest section of my blueprint to get through. If purpose generally takes us 45 minutes, motivation usually takes us 10 to 15. Because you've already done the work. You spent 45 minutes thinking about what truly is getting you going, right? Is the purpose. Now the motivation is more like how do you do that?
One of the things you also talk about is you emphasize owning the cost of your decision in a way that creates confidence. Can you unpack that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, I talk a lot with leaders. There's a cost to leadership. That most of them, especially small business owners, when you get into situations where you're starting to grow a team and you have to do this thing called lead now, and instead of just sell or instead of just promote or market or whatever, and they get really frustrated really quickly because they want to be doing the other things, they want to grow fast, but they don't ever understand the cost of leadership. And the cost of leadership sometimes is that you're not everyone's best friend anymore. The cost of leadership means that you might have to take a lateral or even a step back to get to your goals, right? To get your people to be functioning the way that you need and want them to be influenced, to be influencing. And that cost in life in general builds confidence when you've accepted it beforehand. Think about how many, whether it's business or personal decisions that we make, that when we truly are prepared to pay the cost for it, it just seems so much easier. Yeah, you always hear people say this, Doug. Yeah, I was expecting that. That's what I call accepting the cost. You're expecting the outcome, especially if it's not an ideal one. That's cost. And you've accepted it. Congratulations. Now you've built more confidence. And the more oftentimes you can get deeper and deeper on what accepting the cost really means to you and in each and every situation, the better off you'll be and the more confident you'll be in that decision, because you've already accepted what might happen if it doesn't work.
Yeah, one of the best things that I can give someone that is thinking about starting a business or is early on in their journey is plug into a mentor or a coach that has already been through the hills and valleys. They'll tell you the cost and they'll say, are you willing to accept that? Because it's not if, it's a when it's going to happen. Some of the most successful people that you think of have been in the valley.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Seriously.
it's because they went in the valley. And here's a side note. It's because they went in the valley that they are successful.
Yep. Preach, man. Straight up, dude.
Because growth doesn't happen on the mountaintop.
No, it doesn't. And sometimes that lesson's is hard, and it sucks. And there's just another word for it. It just does. I think it's like, it's making lemons out of lemonade. No, sometimes it's just lemons in your mouth and it's not great.
Yep. But looking at hiring someone like Jon or finding a mentor that knows these pitfalls before they come, it makes those valleys a little less deep, right? It helps you circumvent them a little bit better than if you were trying to go it alone. So I highly implore anyone that is the type of person that Jon helps to reach out to Jon. I do, like, with that being said, I'm not trying to close the podcast. I want to ask another question because this came to mind, is the power of no, right? Because you just talked about it takes 66 days, right? Because we're so distracted, right? I think this goes back to your internal operating system, is you have to have an ability to say no because we're bombarded with opportunities all the time, right?
Yeah.
And there's always a new strategy, a new way to do something, right? But can you just give your insights around the power of saying no?
A lot. Man, it's one of the things that, it's actually one of the things that I think I learned more about this from my wife than I've learned from anything else. She's was and is so much better at saying no. And for years of my life, I wouldn't say no to almost anything. I was, you want to go do this? Yep. I'm going to go do this. Yep. I'm going to get every ounce of life out of this thing, right? Like, let's go do everything, all the things all the time. But you have to know what you're saying no to and to be able to judge it off of that. And that's where we go back to some of the stuff we've already talked about, of having operating systems, knowing your blueprint. And if you don't know those types of things and where your vision is going, like where you're going, where your purpose is, and you can easily violate that by saying yes too often. And to call myself out a little bit, one of the things that, I learned really from my wife, truthfully, was saying no to other obligations when I said that she was the most important thing. It's like, prove it. Kind of like using my own words against me. Prove it. All right, say no to some stuff. And it took me a while, but I'm happy to say that I do. And when, it's not like it's a good lesson to learn of keeping your priorities where your priorities should be and saying no to, whether it's a business opportunity, whether it's an investment, whether it's a personal opportunity that isn't in alignment with what you've stated.
Go back to that purpose, right? And the vision. Does it fall under that umbrella? Even if it does, isn't you weighted enough inside that umbrella?
Do you weight it enough? Exactly. That's a great way to put it, Doug.
Yeah. Because if it doesn't carry enough weight under that umbrella, then you probably should still discuss.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So awesome, man. So I want to, do you have anything else I ask this one last question of every guest, because I always feel like if I don't, there's wisdom left on the cutting room floor. So this is totally open-ended question. What is sitting on your heart, or what have you not talked about that you feel like has to be shared with the audience?
That it's okay not to be okay all the time. Yeah, I think guys need to hear that specifically a little bit. And moms too, for sure. Women in general, right? But I notice it more with guys. It's okay not to be okay all the time. It's okay not to be 100%. And I know we've been taught that that's wrong our entire lives. But one of the things that I work with a lot of successful business owner dudes is this thought process I have of just one extra stone. And I'm going to say a quote that I'm sure that most of your audience has said so many times. I'll figure it out. I'll take care of it. Okay. You can only say that so many times. And the unfortunate thing about carrying that weight, and I think it is a weight, I think of it like a pack or a ruck. You're already full. And the next step with that next stone, no matter what its size could be, might be the one that breaks you. And so create a good ecosystem. And, Doug, and you and I talked beforehand, and I know you have this awesome Bible study. Find your people that you can be authentic with, using these words that we've already used today, that you can open up to about your purpose, that you can get it out and be proud of that type of stuff. You can still be a hard man and be really successful and open up to people about struggles and say things like, I love you. You can do those things at the same time. The hardest men I know, the hardest guys I've ever met in my life, say I love you more than any other person I've ever met. That's a fact. In my life, at least, the hardest dudes, we're talking about heroes. And that's what they do. So it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to open up. It's okay to talk about struggles, and you need to do those types of things. And that's the first thing that came to mind. Honestly, I probably had something else planned, but as we've been talking, that's been what's weighed mostly on my heart right now, is that just open up, talk, find groups, find community.
Community. Wow. We could definitely continue on the podcast with that. Maybe we'll have another conversation about that. But so much respect and trust can come from just letting people know you're not okay. Right.
Yep.
They're in your, like, just to use the military term, and just forgive me because I've not been in the military, but they're in the foxhole with you. Right. Yeah. So awesome, man. Tell people where they can find out more about you, and if you have any resources to share, let them know.
Yeah. So, the resources that I share are actually all on my socials. It's videos that I talk about some of the topics that we talked about today, 90-second videos. I find that I keep doing them because they are massively helpful to people. There's no sales pitches or CTAs or anything like that at the end. It's just me talking about a certain subject for 90 seconds. And I very humbly get a lot of texts and emails and saying, "Hey man, that really struck me. Thanks for sharing that," like from quite a few people. So go check me out on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm assuming that they'll be in the show notes because my business name is actually pretty hard to spell. If you're not watching, you're just listening. It's Bellawood_coaching. So BELLEAUWOOD_coaching for Instagram. And then Jonathan Sheldon is my name on LinkedIn. But yeah, I would be happy to connect. Again, I share all those videos and those insights. It's my gift out there. There's no ulterior motive. So yeah, and then my website is bellawood.coach, not .com, .coach.
All right. So yes, you're right. All those will be in the show notes, depending on where you're watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be down in the video description. If you're watching this on or listening to this on a podcast platform, it'll be in the show notes. So make sure to be clicking on those links and connecting with Jon. Jon, I just want to applaud you because that's something I talk about a lot too, is value lead, right? And it goes back to the authenticity, right? You lead with value. You show people that you know what you're talking about before you even invite them into a conversation of going further, right?
Yep.
It builds that trust and authenticity.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So
let's create value first and then ask for something.
That's right. Awesome, man. So until next time, keep moving forward. Thanks for checking out the Profitable Christian Business Podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.